Hello learners, welcome to this lesson. My name is Teacher Agnes and I'm going to be taking you through mathematics. Our topic of discussion today is algebraic expressions, and we are going to be focusing on symbolic representation. So what is this about? So just like the word suggests, we are going to be using letters to represent unknown values. Okay, so you can refer to these as variables or unknown values. Now for us to be able to do this well, there are some terms that we need to know what they mean when they are used in statements. How can we use them to come up with expressions? And the first of those terms, okay, is the word sum. All right, so sum is the answer that you get after adding different values. So sum represents addition. Okay, the other term is difference. So difference is a term that is used to show the answer you get after subtracting two values. So for instance, if you do 5 minus 2, you get 3. That means that the difference between 5 and 2 is 3. So difference implies that you subtract. So it represents subtraction. The other term is product. Okay? Product. So product is the answer that you get after multiplying values. So the product of 2 and 10 is 20. Because 2 times 10 is 20. So this implies that you should use multiplication. Now another term is quotient. All right, quotient. So quotient is a value that is obtained after dividing. So it implies that you use division. So for instance, the quotient of 10 and 2 is 5 because 10 divided by 2 is 5. The other term that is very common is twice, okay, or double. So if you're told that the cost of sugar is 10 shillings and then you're told that twice that price gives you the price of bread. So what is the price of bread? Twice the price of sugar. That means 2 times 10. Or double means times 2. So twice or double represents multiplication by 2. Alright? Another term is thrice. So thrice represents times 3. Okay? So what is thrice of 20? So 20 times 3, which is 16. Now the other term, for other numbers, it will be just stated as 4 times, 10 times. So the times there guides you to know that you should multiply. So 10 times means times 10. 4 times, if you're told that the size of this pen is, 10 centimeters, and then one big 1 meter ruler is 10 times the size of this, that means you take 10 times 10, which gives you 100 centimeters. Now the other term is more than. More than by, for instance, more than by 5. So if we say that my age is more than yours by 5, that means you take your age plus 5 to get mine. More than means plus. Alright? So more than 5 would mean plus 5. More than by 10 would mean plus 10. And then the opposite of this will be less than by. So number 8, less than by, let's say, 10. So this implies minus 10. So if your age is less than mine by 10, then you take my age minus 10 to get yours. So it is very important to know what each of these terms mean, because you will come across them when writing or when coming up with symbolic representations of word problems. So now I'm going to write down a few statements, and then we are going to generate algebraic expressions from them. So now we're going to look at some examples where we are going to write, expressions that represent the given statements. In the first one, a number is multiplied by 4. So you realize that we do not know which number is this. Like we said, in symbolic representation, we use letters to represent unknown values. We do not know which number it is. So let the number be a value like n. Okay, so n is multiplied by 4. So multiplied is very clear that you need to multiply by 4, and that gives you 4n. Now then, 2 is added to the result. So the result of n times 4 is 4n. So we add 2 to that. So we have 4n plus 2. And that is a representation of this statement. So words that you need to take note of here is multiplication and addition. The next statement, we need to come up with an expression that represents the number of hours in X days. Now for you to answer this question, you need to know how many hours are there in one day. So in one day, you have 24 hours. So how many hours would you have in 2 days? So you would do 2 times 24, which is 48. Now in this question, we don't know how many days we are dealing with. So the number of days is unknown. That is why we are using the letter X to represent the unknown number of days. So if to get the number of hours in 2 days, we do 24 times 2, where 2 represents the number of days, then in this case, we're going to do 24 times x, because the days are x. So 24 times x is the same as 24x. So this is a representation of the number of hours in x days. In the next question, Ben earns thrice as much as his wife. So we're going to highlight the most important words in this statement. So thrice as his wife. Write an expression for the difference between their wages. So these two words are very key because they're going to guide us in coming up with the correct expression. So remember, we do not know how much Ben earns. We do not know how much the wife earns. So we need a letter to represent the wage of one of them. Now, since Ben's salary is being compared to the wife's salary, then we're going to give a letter to the amount of money that the wife earns. So let's say that the wife earns X amount. Now, Ben earns thrice as much as the wife. So we said thrice means times 3. So 3 times X. And 3 times X is the same as 3x. So if the wife earns X, Ben earns 3x. Now, the next part of the question requires us to write an expression for the difference between their wages. Now, we say difference implies that we have to subtract for us to know what is the difference between the amounts that they earn. So the difference in their wages will be equal to, so the one that earns the most is Ben with 3x minus x. So 3x minus x is 2x. And this is the required expression for the difference between their wages. Now we're going to look at some other examples which, are more like exam-like questions that you would expect in a test. Here is another example. Mary is twice as old as his brother. So we're going to highlight all the words that we need to take into account when coming up with the expression. So Mary is twice as old as his brother Dan. and their sister Essie is 7 years younger than, Dan. Write down an expression for the sum of their ages. We don't know how old any one of them is, but we can see that there is a relationship between their ages. So we are going to identify that first. So we have 3 people here. We have Mary, we have Dan, and then we have Essie. Okay? So Mary is twice as old as his brother Dan. And their sister Essie is 7 years younger than Dan. So if you look at this, you realize that the age of Mary is being referenced to the age of Dan, and the age of Essie is still being referenced to the age of Dan. So it is easier to give the age of Dan a letter. Okay? So we're going to represent the age of Dan with a letter X. So Dan is X years old. So now, how old is Mary in relation to X? So Mary is twice as old as Dan. So twice means times 2. So 2 times X is 2X. So Mary is 2X years old. Now how old is Essie? Essie is 7 years younger than Dan. Alright? So Essie is, has less years compared to Dan. And the difference in their years is 7. So Essie is 7 years younger than Dan. So you take the age of Dan, you subtract 7 years. So these 3 are the expressions for their ages. Now, the question requires us to write down the expression for the sum of their ages. So how do you obtain sum? Sum is what you obtain after adding values. So now we are going to add the 3 expressions to come up with the expression for the sum of their ages. So now the sum will be, we have 2x, that is the age for Mary. We have x, which is the age for Dan. And then we have x minus 7, which is the age for Essie. So we're going to put, the like terms are already together, so we're going to add them. 2x plus x is 3x, plus x is 4x. And then minus 7. So this is the expression that represents the sum of the ages of the 3 siblings. Now in this question, we're going to look at 3 possibilities. Ali is 5 years older than his brother. So 5 years older than his brother Isam. Find an expression for the sum of their ages, then the sum of their ages in 5 years. So in the next 5 years, what will be the total of their ages? Then the product of their ages 3 years ago. So these are all very key, points that we have to consider for us to be able to work this out correctly. So you're going to start by creating a table. For us to answer this well, we need to create a table with 3 instances. So we are looking at their present ages, the sum of their ages. We are looking at 5 years to come. We are also looking at 3 years ago. So here we have, 3 years ago. Okay, we have now, and then we have, 5 years to come. So we are looking at the ages of Ali and his brother Isam. Now, currently, Ali is 5 years older than his brother Isam. So we don't know how old each one of them is. But since the age of Ali is being referenced to the age of Isam, then you're going to give the age of Isam a letter. So let's say that Isam is X years old right now. So Ali is 5 years older than Isam. So we're going to add 5 to X because older implies that, Ali has more years by 5. So X plus 5. Now, if we want to get the expression for their ages 3 years ago, if for instance you are 14 years old, how old were you 3 years ago? You are 11. How do you get 11? You take 14 minus 3 to give you 11. So even in this case, even if we are using expressions, it's the same thing. So x plus 5 minus 3. So x plus 5 minus 3. And then for Isam, he is x years old now. So 3 years ago, he was x minus 3 years old. Now to finish up in the last column, we are looking at 5 years to come. So like we said, if you are 14 years right now, in 5 years, how old will you be? So you take 14 plus 5, which is equal to 19. So we do the same thing here. Ali is x plus 5 years old now. So in 5 years' time, he will be x plus 5 plus 5. Alright? The current age plus 5. Then Isam will be x plus 5. Now, having gotten these representations, we can now be able to answer the questions provided. The first one is for the sum of their current ages. So for part A, the sum will be, right now, Ali is x plus 5 years old, and Isam is x years old. Now, if you add this, we have x plus x, which is equal to 2x, and then plus 5. That is the answer to the first part. Now, the second part is asking for the sum of their ages in 5 years. So, in 5 years, these are their separate ages. So, the sum will be x plus 5 plus 5. That is the age for Ali. And the age for Isam is x plus 5. So this is equal to x plus x is 2x. And then 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 plus 5 is 15. So this is the expression representing the sum of their ages in 5 years. Now for the third part, we need to determine the expression that represents the product of their ages 3 years ago. So product is obtained through multiplication. 3 years ago, Ali was x plus 5 minus 3 years, and Isam was x minus 3. So product means we multiply the two expressions. So Ali, actually we can simplify this because 5 minus 3 is equal to x plus 2 because 5 minus 3 is 2. So the age for Ali 3 years ago was x plus 2, and the age for Isam was x minus 3. So that is how you show multiplication of expressions. So this is how you do this type of a question, and now I'll give you one for you to attempt. So now you will attempt this question. James is 20 years older than his daughter Anne. Find an expression for the sum of their present ages, the product of their ages in 10 years' time, the sum of their ages 2 years ago. So make sure you start by highlighting all the terms that are relevant in ensuring that you come up with the correct expression. So I hope that you have enjoyed this lesson and learned how to represent unknown values using letters and coming up with expressions. Thank you and see you in the next lesson.